The Boeing 737 cruised at 37,000 feet through cloudless sky, the kind of perfect blue that made passengers forget they were hurtling through thin air at 500 miles per hour. In seat 12B, a woman in faded jeans and a gray hoodie leaned against the window, eyes closed, earbuds trailing down to a silent phone. The flight attendant had already passed her twice, nodding the stillness, the way her chest rose and fell in the practiced rhythm of someone who could sleep anywhere. Most passengers wouldn't have looked twice. She was unremarkable in the way that blended into any crowd, medium height, dark hair pulled back, no jewelry except a simple silver band on her right hand. But in row 23, four men in casual clothes sat with a different kind of attention. They weren't looking at phones or magazines. Their eyes kept drifting forward, settling on 12B with the precision of trained observation. The oldest, maybe 40 with graying temples, tilted his head slightly toward the man beside him. No words, just a look. The younger operative followed his gaze, then straightened almost imperceptibly. Something in his expression shifted from casual travel to something else entirely. Recognition, maybe, or respect. The cabin lights dimmed for the in-flight entertainment, and the woman in 12B shifted, her left hand falling from the armrest. For just a moment, the sleeve of her hoodie rode up. A tattoo became visible on her inner forearm, not decorative, not tribal. Wings. Small, precise, military aviation wings inked in black with something written beneath in letters too small to read from a distance. The man in 23A leaned forward slightly, squinting. His jaw tightened. He reached across and gripped his teammate's wrist, two quick pulses. The universal signal, look, now. By the time the others in row 23 had processed what they were seeing, the woman's sleeve had fallen back into place. But it was enough. The youngest operator, barely 25 with the build of someone who ran 10 miles before breakfast, whispered something that might have been a call sign. The older man shook his head once. Wait, confirm. They couldn't be sure, not yet. But the possibility alone changed everything. 23 rows ahead, the woman exhaled slowly, somewhere between waking and sleep. She didn't know she was being watched. Didn't know that 4 Navy SEALs were running through mental databases, trying to match a half-glimpsed tattoo to a legend most people thought had retired or died. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their descent into San Diego in 90 minutes. Routine. Ordinary. Except nothing about this flight was ordinary anymore. The SEAL in 23A pulled out his phone, switched it to airplane mode, then opened an encrypted app that worked offline. He scrolled through files he shouldn't have had on a civilian device, classified rosters with photos and service records that officially didn't exist. His thumb stopped on a particular entry. The photo was 10 years old, the woman younger, hair shorter, wearing a flight suit with a patch that read Nighthawk. Below it, a name that made his throat tighten. He turned the phone toward his teammates, shielding the screen with his palm. All 4 men went still. The kind of still that came from seeing a ghost walk into a room. The woman in 12B hadn't moved. Her breathing remained steady, but now the SEALs noticed other things. The way her right hand rested on her thigh, fingers positioned exactly where a flight stick would be. The slight tilt of her head, angled toward the window but with peripheral awareness of the aisle. The controlled stillness of someone trained to conserve energy for when it mattered. The oldest SEAL had seen combat in 3 different countries. He jumped from aircraft at night with 0 visibility and cleared buildings room by room against enemies who wanted him dead. But his hands were shaking now, because if the photo was right, if the tattoo matched, they were sitting 20 feet behind Lieutenant Commander Kestrel Vance, and Kestrel Vance was supposed to be untouchable, unreachable. The kind of operator whose missions were so classified that even her existence was compartmentalized. She'd flown sorties that changed the outcome of battles the public would never hear about. She'd put ordnance on targets with surgical precision while taking fire from systems designed to kill aircraft like hers. And then 3 years ago she'd vanished. No fanfare. No retirement ceremony. Just gone. The rumors had been wild. Some said she'd burned out, couldn't handle the pressure. Others claimed she'd been killed on a black operation and the Pentagon had buried it. A few whispered she'd gone private sector, selling her skills to the highest bidder. But looking at her now, slumped in a middle seat on a commercial flight with discount earbuds and worn-out sneakers, none of those stories made sense. She looked like a grad student heading home for the holidays, like someone's tired sister catching a cheap flight, not like a woman who'd earned the Distinguished Flying Cross twice. The youngest SEAL leaned close to his team leader. "Should we?" "No," the older man cut him off, voice barely audible. "We do nothing. But sir, if that's actually, I know who it is." His tone carried weight that ended the discussion. They'd wait, watch, and when the time was right, they'd approach with the respect her record demanded. But not here, not yet. The plane began its descent, engines changing pitch as the pilot adjusted altitude. Outside the window, the California coastline came into view, brown hills giving way to urban sprawl and the deep blue of the Pacific. The woman in 12B opened her eyes. Just like that, without the gradual stirring most people did after sleeping. One moment unconscious, the next fully aware. She looked out the window for a long moment, expression unreadable, then reached up and pulled her hood down. Her hair was longer than in the photo, threaded with a few gray strands that caught the cabin light. She didn't look around, didn't scan for threats or check her surroundings the way operatives were trained to do. She just sat there, staring at the ocean below, and for a second something flickered across her face. Loss, maybe, or longing. The landing gear deployed with a heavy thunk that resonated through the fuselage. Most passengers barely noticed, absorbed in their phones or conversations. But the woman's right hand clenched briefly on the armrest, knuckles whitening before she forced herself to relax. Muscle memory. The SEALs saw it, recognized it. She was hearing something else in that mechanical sound, remembering some other descent in some other aircraft where the stakes had been infinitely higher. The 737 touched down smooth and clean, tires chirping against runway concrete. The passengers applauded, civilians always applauded, and the woman in 12B smiled slightly, the expression sad and knowing all at once. The plane taxied toward the gate, and suddenly everyone was standing, grabbing bags from overhead bins, pressing into the aisle with the desperate urgency of people who'd been sitting too long. The SEALs didn't move. They watched as the woman stood, pulled a small backpack from the bin, and waited patiently for her turn to exit. No rushing, no impatience. She moved up the aisle with the crowd, passing row 23 without a glance. As she went by, the oldest SEAL caught a scent of standard airport soap and recycled air, nothing memorable. But he also saw the way she walked, weight on the balls of her feet, balance perfect, ready to pivot or react without thinking. The kind of movement that came from thousands of hours in a cockpit pulling GS that crushed normal people into unconsciousness. They let her get ahead, then fell in behind, keeping distance. Through the jetway into the gate area past the usual chaos of travelers and their luggage. The woman headed toward ground transportation, not baggage claim, traveling light, always ready to move. The SEALs followed her outside into the San Diego afternoon, where the sun hit like a physical weight and the smell of jet fuel mixed with ocean salt. She walked toward the taxi stand, and that's when the team leader made his decision. "Now," he said quietly. They moved as a unit, closing the distance with purpose but not aggression. When they were 10 feet behind her, the oldest SEAL called out, voice clear and formal. "Ma'am." She stopped. Didn't turn around immediately, but her shoulders squared almost imperceptibly. The reaction of someone who'd heard that tone before, who knew what it meant. Slowly, she looked back over her shoulder. Her eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds, and they assessed the 4 men in less than a second. Military. Operators. Looking for confirmation. Recognition hit her face like a wave, and for just a moment her carefully neutral expression cracked. Not fear, not surprise, something closer to resignation. "Gentlemen," she said quietly. Her voice was lower than expected, slightly raspy from sleep or disuse, the kind of voice that didn't need to shout to command a room. The 4 SEALs stood at attention, not the exaggerated parade ground version, but the real thing. The posture of warriors acknowledging someone who'd earned their respect in the only way that mattered. The team leader stepped forward. "Lieutenant Commander Vance, we wanted to—" "Don't," she interrupted, but not unkindly. "Whatever you think you know, whatever you want to say, just don't." Ma'am, with respect, the oldest seal hesitated, choosing words carefully. We served in the same theater. Different times, different units, but we know what you did, what you accomplished. Kestrel Vance looked at him for a long moment. Behind her, taxis came and went, passengers hauled luggage, families reunited with tears and laughter, normal life continuing around them like water flowing around stones. That was someone else, she said finally. A long time ago. Doesn't change what it meant, the seal pressed. Doesn't change what you are. Something painful flashed across her face there and gone so fast that someone not trained to read microexpressions would have missed it. What I was, she corrected. Past tense, that person doesn't exist anymore. She turned fully now and they could see the tattoo clearly where her sleeve had ridden up. The wings were more detailed up close, each feather individually rendered. Beneath them, words in careful script, into night's deep. Her squadron motto, the SEALs knew it, knew the stories. Night operations flown so low that terrain-following radar was the only thing between life and a mountainside. Precision strikes delivered in conditions that grounded every other aircraft. Pilots who flew into places that were supposed to be impossible and came back, usually. We just wanted you to know, the youngest operator spoke up, voice thick with something that might have been emotion. That we know, that it mattered. Kestrel's jaw tightened. For a second she looked like she might walk away without another word. But then she nodded once, a short dip of her chin that acknowledged them without encouraging further conversation. Thank you for your service, she said, the standard civilian phrase sounding strange coming from her, like a door closing, a separation being established between what she'd been and what she was now. The team leader started to respond, but she was already moving, stepping to the curb where a taxi had just pulled up. She opened the door, threw her backpack across the seat, and paused with one foot inside, looking back at the four men who'd recognized her. Do me a favor, she said quietly. Forget you saw me. Forget this conversation. I'm not that person anymore and she can't come back. She slid into the taxi and closed the door. Through the window they watched her lean forward, say something to the driver. The cab pulled away from the curb, merged into traffic and disappeared around a corner. The four SEALs stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, the youngest one spoke. What do you think happened? Why she walked away? Team leader watched the space where the taxi had been, his expression troubled. I don't know, but someone who flies like she did, who does what she did. You don't just walk away clean, something broke, something that mattered more than all the medals and commendations combined. Should we report this? Let command know she's what? The older man turned to face his team. She's a civilian in San Diego who wants to be left alone. We're going to respect that. They nodded, but none of them moved. Because they all understood what they'd just witnessed. Not just recognition of a superior officer. Something deeper. The acknowledgement of sacrifice that went beyond missions and medals. The cost that came due when you did impossible things in impossible places and somehow survived when others hadn't. Somewhere in San Diego traffic, Kestrel Vance stared out the taxi window at a city she didn't really see. Her right hand opened and closed on her knee, fingers moving through phantom flight controls, muscle memory playing out sequences she'd flown 1,000 times. The driver tried small talk about the weather, about baseball, about traffic on the 5. She made noncommittal sounds that discouraged further conversation. The tattoo on her arm itched. It always itched when someone from the old life showed up, like her body was trying to remind her of something she was working hard to forget. The taxi dropped her at an apartment complex in Chula Vista, nothing fancy. She paid cash, didn't ask for a receipt, and climbed stairs to a second-floor unit. Inside, the apartment was almost empty. A futon, a card table, kitchen supplies that suggested someone who ate to survive rather than enjoy. No pictures on the walls. No personal items that would tell a visitor anything about who lived here, except for one thing. In the corner, propped against the wall where most people would put a television, stood a framed photograph. Not military, not official. Just a snapshot of two people in flight suits, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning like idiots in front of an FA-18 Super Hornet. The woman on the left was younger Kestrel, face unlined, eyes bright with the kind of confidence that came from believing you were invincible. The woman on the right was Lieutenant Junior Grade Morgan Hale, her wingman, her best friend, the person who'd had her back through 3 deployments and more close calls than either of them could count. Morgan Hale had died 2 years and 8 months ago. Not in combat, not in some dramatic dogfight that would make a good story. She died because of a maintenance error, a faulty fuel line that no one had caught during inspection, a fire that turned her aircraft into a coffin at 20,000 feet. She'd ejected too late. The seat had fired, but the altitude was wrong, the trajectory was wrong. Kestrel had been flying 300 meters away when it happened, had watched her best friend's parachute deploy, watched it tangle, watched Morgan fall like a broken bird into the Pacific Ocean. They'd recovered the body 6 hours later, closed casket funeral, 21-gun salute, a flag folded with crisp precision and handed to Morgan's mother, who'd looked at Kestrel with eyes that asked the question everyone was thinking. Why are you here? Why are you alive when my daughter is dead? Kestrel had resigned her commission 4 months later, walked away from the Navy, from aviation, from everything she'd spent 15 years building. No one had tried very hard to stop her. They'd seen it before. Survivor's guilt could end a career as effectively as any injury. She stood in her empty apartment now, looking at the photograph, and felt the familiar weight settle over her chest. The SEALs at the airport had called her lieutenant commander, had looked at her with respect and admiration. They didn't know, couldn't know, that the last time she'd flown, the last real mission before everything fell apart, she'd made a choice, target selection, 2 buildings in a compound. Intelligence suggested high-value targets in one, possible civilians in the other. She'd had 30 seconds to decide, weapons hot, enemy air defenses tracking her, Morgan on the radio asking for confirmation. Kestrel had picked the left building, had put a 2,000-pound bomb through the roof with textbook precision. The building had collapsed, secondary explosions suggesting munitions inside, exactly what intelligence predicted. Mission accomplished. They'd found out 2 days later that the high-value targets had been in the right building. The left building had contained a family, 7 people, including 3 children. It had been an honest mistake. Intelligence failure, not pilot error. She'd been cleared of any wrongdoing. The official report praised her decision-making under pressure, but Morgan had known. Had seen it in Kestrel's face during the debrief. Had tried to talk to her about it, to tell her that war was full of impossible choices, and sometimes you made the wrong one. Then Morgan had died, and Kestrel was left with the knowledge that her last conversations with her best friend had been about the family she'd killed. That she'd never gotten to explain, never gotten to apologize, never got to say that the weight of those deaths was something she'd carry until her own. The photograph stared at her from across the room, young, confident, innocent in ways that seemed impossible now. Kestrel turned away, walked to the kitchenette, and opened the cabinet where normal people kept glasses. Inside was a bottle of whiskey, 2/3 empty, and a prescription bottle of sleeping pills. She looked at both for a long moment, then closed the cabinet door without touching either. Not today. Today she'd stay clean, stay present, feel everything the way Morgan couldn't anymore. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, saw a number she didn't recognize, local area code, probably spam. She almost declined the call, but something made her answer. Yes. This Kestrel Vance, male voice, older, authority that came naturally rather than forced. Who's asking? My name is Admiral James Corrigan. I'm calling from NAVAIR, and I need to speak with you about a situation that's developed. It's urgent. Kestrel's grip tightened on the phone. NAVAIR, Naval Air Systems Command, the organization responsible for everything from aircraft acquisition to pilot training. She'd worked with them extensively during her active years, but that was over. Done. I'm retired, Admiral. Whatever situation you're dealing with, I can't help. Ma'am, with respect, you haven't heard what I'm calling about. Something in his tone made her pause, not the usual bureaucratic pushiness. Real concern, maybe even fear. 5 minutes, Corrigan continued. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes of your time, and if you want to hang up after that, I'll never call again. Kestrel walked to her window, looked out at the parking lot below. Someone was washing a car. A kid was riding a bike in circles. Normal life, safe life, Life without the weight of impossible decisions and friends who died screaming into radios. "You've got 3 minutes," she said. "Make it count." She heard Corrigan take a breath like a man preparing to jump off a cliff. 6 hours ago, one of our carrier groups in the Persian Gulf came under attack, not from conventional forces, from a drone swarm. 30-plus units, coordinated, operating with levels of precision and adaptability we've never seen before. They took out 2 of our screening vessels before we could establish effective countermeasures. Kestrel felt something cold slide down her spine. "And you're calling me because?" "Because the drones weren't just advanced. They were learning, adapting to our tactics in real time. Every countermeasure we deployed, they evolved past it within minutes. It's like fighting something with a perfect memory and unlimited processing power." "Controlled," Kestrel said, "not a question. We think so, but more sophisticated than anything we've encountered. And here's the problem, Commander. They're still out there. The carrier group is effectively pinned down. You have other pilots, other assets. This isn't my problem anymore, Admiral. Our pilots can't get close enough to engage effectively. The drones are operating with sensor capabilities that defeat our standard approach vectors. We need someone who can think outside our current doctrine. Someone who's proven they can succeed in environments that shouldn't be survivable." Kestrel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You need someone expendable. Someone who's already out of the service, so if they get killed it doesn't affect active duty numbers." "That's not—" Corrigan stopped himself, started again, voice quieter. "I've read your file, Commander, all of it. I know about Lieutenant Hale. I know why you resigned. And I know you think you're done, that you've got nothing left to give. But I also know that you're the best night operations pilot we've had in 20 years. The drones are hitting us at night when our technology gives us the least advantage. You're the person who specialized in turning that disadvantage into an asset." "I can't help you," Kestrel said, but her voice was less certain now. "Can't or won't. Both. I'm done, Admiral. I've got nothing left in the tank." "Then answer me this," Corrigan said. "If Morgan Hale were alive and she was out there right now on one of those ships, under attack from weapons that are killing our people, would you still say you can't help?" Kestrel closed her eyes. Felt the anger rise hot and immediate in her chest. "That's a low blow. It's the truth. We've got sailors dying out there, Commander, young men and women who signed up to serve their country, and they're facing an enemy that's beyond our current capabilities. You might be able to make a difference. You might be the difference. And if I say no," silence on the other end, then I thank you for your time and hang up. No pressure, no guilt trip. You've given enough, more than enough. No one would blame you for walking away from this." Kestrel opened her eyes, stared at the photograph on the wall. Morgan grinning like the world was full of possibilities, and none of them involved death or failure or choices that destroyed you from the inside out. "If I come," Kestrel heard herself say, "I'm not wearing the uniform. I'm not rejoining the service. This is one time, one mission, and then I'm done for real. Understood? Understood." The relief in Corrigan's voice was palpable. "I'll have a car at your location in 30 minutes. Pack light. We'll brief you in transit. What aircraft are you putting me in?" That's going to be part of the brief." Which meant it was something unusual, something she wouldn't like. Kestrel hung up without saying goodbye, stood in her apartment looking at the nothing she'd built for herself over the past 3 years, the careful emptiness that was supposed to keep her safe from pain but had only made room for more of it. She walked to her bedroom, pulled a duffel bag from the closet, started throwing clothes inside, not the civilian stuff, the other clothes, the ones she'd kept in the back, wrapped in plastic, pretending she'd donate them eventually but never quite managing to follow through. Flight suit, boots, the insignia she'd removed when she resigned, stored in a small box like relics of a person who'd died. She held one of the patches in her hand, the Nighthawk Squadron emblem. A black bird silhouetted against a crescent moon, into night's deep. Her fingers traced the stitching, remembering the first time she'd earned the right to wear it. The pride, the belonging, the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That person was gone, but maybe she could borrow her courage for one more flight. Just one. For the sailors who were dying in the Persian Gulf. For Morgan, who would have gone without hesitation if their positions were reversed. For the part of herself that she'd tried to kill but couldn't quite finish off. Kestrel zipped the duffel, slung it over her shoulder, and took one last look at the empty apartment. She didn't lock the door behind her. The black SUV arrived exactly 30 minutes later. No military markings, civilian plates, but the driver had the bearing of someone who spent his life around classified operations. He took her bag without comment, held the rear door open. Inside, two men in business casual waited. One was maybe 50, trim and severe with the kind of face that smiled rarely and meant it never. The other was younger 30s, with the nervous energy of someone smart enough to understand how bad the situation was. "Commander Vance, I'm Captain Derek Walsh, Tactical Operations." The older man extended his hand. She shook it, nodding the calluses that came from time on firing ranges. "This is Dr. Ethan Cross, DARPA liaison." "I'm not a commander anymore," Kestrel said as the SUV pulled into traffic. "Haven't been for 3 years." "Habit," Walsh said, not apologizing. "We appreciate you agreeing to hear us out." "I haven't agreed to anything except listening." "Fair enough." Walsh opened a tablet, swiped to a video file. "This is footage from the USS Michael Murphy taken 6 hours ago." The screen showed night vision camera footage from a ship's deck. Green-tinted darkness, then suddenly the sky was full of movement. Small aircraft, maybe 2 feet across, moving in patterns that looked almost organic. Like a flock of birds, but faster, more coordinated. They dove and weaved through defensive fire that should have shredded them. "Standard anti-drone countermeasures?" Kestrel asked. "Everything. Electronic warfare, kinetic intercepts, directed energy weapons. Nothing worked for more than a few seconds. Watch this." Walsh scrubbed forward in the video. One of the drones broke from the formation, accelerated toward a weapon system on the destroyer's superstructure. A phalanx CIWS opened up, the distinctive sound of its 20mm cannon filling the audio. The drone jinked left, right, performed a barrel roll that should have been impossible for something its size. The phalanx tracked, adjusted, fired again. The drone dropped 10 meters, shot forward, and impacted the CIWS mount directly. The explosion was small but precisely placed. The weapon system went dark. "They're not just evading," Cross spoke up, voice tight. "They're learning our system's response times, calculating optimal approach vectors on the fly. Every defensive measure we use, they adapt to." "How many ships have we lost?" Kestrel kept her voice neutral, professional. The person she used to be sliding back into place like muscle memory. "2 so far. The USS Cole and the USS Momsen, both Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. Combined casualties of 43 sailors with another 70 wounded." Walsh's voice was flat, delivering the numbers like a weather report because emotion wouldn't help anyone. "The carrier itself. Still operational, but the drones are maintaining a perimeter that keeps our aircraft grounded. Any plane that tries to launch gets swarmed. We lost an F-35 on the deck when 5 drones coordinated a strike on the catapult system. Pilot ejected, but he won't fly again." Kestrel processed this, mind automatically running through scenarios. "What about long-range strikes? Cruise missiles from other platforms?" "Tried it. The drones have some kind of networked early warning. They scatter, reform, and the missiles hit empty ocean. It's like trying to shoot a cloud. And before you suggest it, yes, we've tried deploying our own drone swarms. They get hacked and turned against us within minutes." "So you need a manned aircraft," Kestrel said slowly. "Something with a human pilot who can think unpredictably, adapt in ways that aren't algorithmic." "Exactly." Cross leaned forward, excited despite the circumstances. "These drones are optimized to fight technology. Sensor systems, automated responses, pattern-based tactics, but a skilled pilot making decisions based on intuition and experience. That's not something they can easily predict. Except every pilot you send gets swarmed before they can engage." Kestrel looked between the two men. "So what makes you think I'll be any different?" Walsh and Cross exchanged a glance. Then Walsh swiped to another image on the tablet. Kestrel looked at it and felt her breath catch. The aircraft was like nothing she'd ever seen. Sleek, predatory, with lines that suggested speed even standing still. The cockpit was set low in the fuselage, almost invisible. The wings were swept back at an aggressive angle, and the whole thing had a radar-absorbent coating that made it look like it was made of shadow. "This is Ghost Eye," Walsh said quietly. "The most advanced stealth strike fighter ever built, developed in a black program that officially doesn't exist. It's designed for one thing, getting into places where nothing else can survive and delivering surgical strikes." "Let me guess," Kestrel said. "You want me to fly that thing into a drone swarm that's already killed 2 destroyers and taken out an F-35. That's the idea." "You're insane." "Probably," Walsh agreed. "But you're the only pilot we have with the combination of skills this needs: low-altitude night operations, high-threat environment experience, and the ability to make split-second decisions that have kept you alive when others died. Ghost Eye is optimized for exactly the kind of mission you specialized in." Kestrel looked at the image again. The aircraft was beautiful in the way deadly things often were: purpose-built, uncompromising. She could already imagine what it would feel like to fly, the responsiveness, the power. Part of her, the part she'd been trying to kill for 3 years, wanted it badly. "What's the actual mission?" she asked, because she was already losing this fight with herself and they all knew it. "Intelligence suggests the drones are being controlled from a source on the Iranian coast. A facility we've identified but can't hit with conventional weapons because it's underground, hardened, and surrounded by air defense systems that would shred anything we send. Ghost Eye can penetrate that defense network. You deliver a bunker-buster munition on the target, take out the control node, and the drones go dormant." "Just like that," Kestrel said flatly. "Just fly through multiple layers of advanced air defenses, avoid a swarm of AI-controlled drones, and drop a bomb on a target that's probably expecting exactly this response. More or less. And if I'm wrong, if taking out this facility doesn't stop the drones," Walsh's expression was grim, "then we're looking at a fundamental shift in naval warfare. Carrier groups have been the foundation of American power projection for 80 years. If drones can effectively neutralize them, we lose our ability to respond to threats globally. It's not just a tactical defeat, it's strategic." Kestrel was quiet for a long moment, watching the city pass outside the SUV's tinted windows. People going about their lives, unaware that in the Persian Gulf young sailors were fighting and dying against an enemy that represented the future of warfare. "I killed civilians," she said suddenly, "2 years ago. 7 people, including children. It was an intelligence failure, not my fault, everyone said so. But they were still dead and I was the one who dropped the bomb." Walsh nodded slowly. "I know. It's in your file. And you still want me to fly this mission, still trust me to make the right choices." "Commander," Walsh caught himself. "Ms. Vance, I've been in this business for 26 years. I've seen hundreds of pilots, some great, most good, a few who shouldn't have been anywhere near a cockpit. You know what separates the great ones from everyone else? It's not natural talent or perfect decision-making. It's the ability to carry their mistakes, learn from them, and still function when everything's on the line." "That's a nice speech," Kestrel said, "but it doesn't change the fact that I'm broken, that I walked away because I couldn't handle the weight anymore." "Maybe," Walsh said. "Or maybe you walked away because you were the only one honest enough to acknowledge that weight. Most pilots compartmentalize, bury their mistakes and pretend they don't matter. You felt yours. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." "Being human got Morgan killed," Kestrel said quietly. "Being human made me hesitate on that target selection long enough to pick wrong. Being human is a liability in combat." Cross spoke up, surprising both of them. "Actually, that's not true. I've studied the drone AI extensively. You want to know its biggest weakness? It doesn't understand human irrationality. It can predict optimal tactics, calculate angles and vectors with perfect precision. But humans do stupid, illogical things that work anyway. We take risks that don't make mathematical sense. We make leaps of intuition based on incomplete data, and sometimes we're right." He leaned back, adjusting his glasses. "That's what we need. Not perfection. Not someone who makes the right choice every time. We need someone who can operate in chaos and uncertainty, who can adapt to situations the AI hasn't been programmed to handle." The SUV turned onto a restricted road leading to what looked like a private airfield. Guard posts appeared, armed personnel who waved them through without hesitation. "We're wheels up in 90 minutes, Walsh said, flying you to an undisclosed location where Ghost Eye is staged. You'll have time to familiarize yourself with the aircraft, run simulations, and meet the support team. After that, it's your call. You fly the mission or you don't. No one's going to force you." Kestrel watched the airfield approach. She could see an aircraft on the tarmac, a C-37, the military version of a Gulfstream business jet. Fast, comfortable, the kind of plane that moved high-value personnel to places they needed to be without anyone noticing. "I have one condition," she said. Walsh raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "If I do this, if I fly this mission and somehow pull it off, you bury my involvement. No commendations, no recognition, no story about the pilot who came out of retirement to save the day. I go back to my apartment in Chula Vista, and you people forget I exist. Understood?" "That's actually easier than the alternative," Walsh said. "Ghost Eye's existence is classified at the highest levels. We weren't planning on publicizing any of this anyway." "Good." Kestrel picked up her duffel bag as the SUV stopped near the C-37's boarding stairs. "Then let's go see this impossible aircraft you want me to fly into an impossible situation." She climbed the stairs without looking back, each step feeling like a descent rather than an ascent, walking away from the life she'd built, the safety, the emptiness that hurt less than purpose. Inside the C-37, the cabin was configured for mission planning rather than comfort. Screens lined the walls, showing maps and data feeds from the Persian Gulf. Two more people waited inside, a woman in a flight suit with commander's stripes, and a man in civilian clothes who had the compact build and watchful eyes of special operations. "Commander Vance, I'm Commander Sarah Cho, operations officer for this mission." The woman extended her hand, grip firm and professional. "And this is Master Chief Ben Okonkwo, SEAL Team 3. He'll be coordinating your combat search and rescue if things go wrong." "When things go wrong," Kestrel corrected, shaking hands. "Let's not pretend this is anything but a long-shot desperation play." "Agreed," Okonkwo said.